welcome back to the show, the podcast, guys. Thanks for having me. So we today are lucky to have a guest. His name is Frederick Hubler. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did that right.
Hubler, perfect. And you are the CEO of Creative Capital Wealth Management Group,
It's a
or
mouthful, isn't it?
CCWMG for short. Welcome to the podcast, Fred. And why don't we get started with having you tell us a little bit about what you guys do over at Creative Capital Wealth
Sure.
Management Group?
I think what we do is a little bit of where I came from. I came from Delaware County. I still say Wooder and Wooder Ice. So I didn't come from money, and no one worked harder than my parents, in my opinion, growing up. And we never got out of lower middle class. And I can tell, in my mind, how many times did you go to Disney? That's what class you are in. Never go to Disney, but if you go once a year, once your whole grown up life. So I grew up thinking that the rich knew things that the rest of us didn't. And I'm standing telling you, not only is that 100% true, it's also a government program called accreditation, meaning there's a special category of investments people aren't even allowed to see unless they're worth $1 million or more. So I built this firm trying to hold up the velvet rope to let everybody that could and should get access to things that they didn't know exist. And I thought it was a genius. Really, until recently, it wasn't as responsive as I thought. Now we're in 34 states. I get paid to write for Forbes.com as a contributor about alternative investments. And I started 20 plus years ago in the same zip code as Vanguard. So I wasn't going to be bigger, wasn't going to be cheaper. So I used Harvard and Yale's endowment annual reports. Like, where are the smart people putting money? And then I just started doing that with my clients and with my own money. And that's private equity. And there's a lot of fun things out there. And there's a ton, if you Google Harvard and Yale, again, they're not clients, but I use that to build my company. We moved out of that zip code to in Chester County, a next zip code. So to answer your question, we do a household endowment for clients. If they want to match what they're doing, we do it. We also have a trademark on retainer-based planning, which is fun because the entire industry, and I have a book coming out, Being a Contrarian. So you're going to hear that contrarian theme. And I'm not a contrarian because I want to be. The things I think should happen aren't what is normal. So the entire industry, including me, says find someone you like. They charge you 1%. They put your money in harm's way, and then you get advice. And so in 2020, I had some time on my hands. Things were slowing for obvious reasons. I realized that if we can create a retainer-based engagement model with a client, what that will do is they don't have to give us any money. Their money might be in their 401k because they're the CEO of a big company, or in their businesses or in the real estate. So we trademarked, you can't trademark retainer-based planning just like you can't trademark vanilla ice cream. So ours is called Milestone Clarification Process. And I thought I was a genius, and I did it in 2020, and nothing happened, Jeff, until 2023. It blew up. We're now in 34 states. Very large firms that are famous, you would know them, have reached out to me and said, we think you cracked the code on how advice would be giving in the future. On the one hand, I'm flattered. On the other hand, it's like Apple saying, hey, that's a nice app you got there. Like, I don't want the big guys knowing who I am, and they do. And it's a little scary. And I'll get an email from people. I'm like, oh my God, I just saw you. CEOs of gigantic companies, and I'm not going to say their name, but you would know them, reaching out to me saying, hey, I think you're onto something here. So that's kind of where we are. Then the third thing that we're doing, so we have the household endowment, retainer-based planning. The third one's the easiest one and the fun one for us. We do a tax mitigation. No one wants to pay taxes.
Mhm.
And so we have a tax mitigation program where if we can't find double the cost of the program, we refund the entire price of the program. And the funny part is it took me longer to get that through compliance than it did to make the client facing, because with AI and Canva, you can make anything look great. We had the collateral weeks before we got the okay. And I felt that it was the right thing to do, because if someone engages us to help them with tax mitigation and we can't find it, they shouldn't have paid us. And I don't know that until I'm in. So by having if we can't double your value of what you paid us, giving all your money back, to me, that's the way I'd want to handle it. I almost like so it's a guarantee that if we can't find 12,000, we refund the 6,000. That's, I have no problem telling you what the numbers are. That I thought was a neat idea. And it's interesting that one's blown up. We have a wait list for it. I had to hire more strategists in my office to deal with that. And I understand why. But it's funny, I really thought the retainer was going to take off. It was 3 years of crickets.
Mm.
And this little idea of like, we'll look at people's taxes and we'll take a 12-month program so they're not rushed and we can get their returns looked at. the average so far, and again, it's fairly new. We did it friends like a slow opening, or what do you call it, a closed opening. Like we have a restaurant, you just let people in. We're past that phase, just to work out the kinks of our workflows. But now everyone that went through the program, the average savings has been about $200,000, which just blows my mind. And then they refer like 5 or 6 people. So I accepted your podcast because I wanted to be on it. I love what you're doing, and then I'm like, oh my god. I have to start blocking in, and we talked about it earlier before the thing. If this was canceled for whatever reason, I'm like, oh my God, I get an hour back because there's a lot going on. And
Yeah.
so I feel like the dog that caught the car. Like I've been chasing the car. I've been doing it for 20 plus years and I've always been the outsider. All my buddies in the business, my friends in the business, they're like, oh, just sell American funds, just sell annuities. I'm like,
Right.
no, I want to do alts. I want to do the things that I think I would want my money in. And I'm in everything I sell my clients, or put my clients into. And now, it's in the left field, and now the pack's moved, and now in the front of the field, looking like, why is everyone looking at me? Interesting. When the editor of Forbes.com, when the contributor, when they called, I wouldn't return the phone call. I thought they were trying to sell me something. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And we have a PR guy that's working for free. Like this guy's like, listen, you are on to something. Can I just help you? I'm like, I'm not paying you. I have enough going on. Not that I'm cheap. I just didn't need it. I didn't think I needed it. It's like, you don't
Right.
have to pay me. Just if anyone needs anybody, if you don't mind, I can just tell them I helped you. I'm like, that's fine. Don't. So he called me and he said, why are you not returning, the editor's call? I'm like, I'm not buying anything. He's like, no, they want to hire you to write about alternative investments on Forbes.com. I'm like, all right, have him call me back. I'll talk to him now. And so that's the kind of where we are. So really 3 things: household endowment, container-based planning, which really no one does. And if they do it our way, we have a trademark, so they'll talk to my lawyer. And then that tax mitigation part, nobody wants to pay taxes. And I definitely underestimated the appetite of people not wanting to pay taxes. Like we know we don't want to pay taxes, but it is interesting how many people are like, I'm in. I'm like, you don't even know what you're doing. Like, no, I'll pay the 6, see if you can find it. And because a lot of them are coming in from referrals, they already know, they already know they're going to get something out of it in most cases. Full
Nice.
disclosure in most cases, but we haven't had any case not work. So that's my story.
A fantastic intro, Fred. So we'll put disclaimers, not financial advice. Just
Yes,
to
yeah.
make
Yeah, don't
sure
do anything. Don't do anything I tell you to do.
but this is no, no, no. But and you said a lot of things, and I could pull on a lot of threads there. By the way, I love the fact that you're contrarian, but not for the sake of being argumentative. You're contrarian because you have a differentiated point of view. You're authentic, and now the market is seeing the value of your like this is really cool. The product market fit.
Yeah.
And you're listing off a bunch of things. I also really appreciate you sharing and just being open about, not growing up rich, which gives you a different point of view. In America, through hard work and time, anyone can become rich, but it's really cool when people aren't entitled or born with a silver spoon, and then here you have, you're helping people. I also heard that that's right. If we're going to talk about where you are physically, you're in Pennsylvania, and was it John Boyle, the inventor of Vanguard?
Yeah.
He's a legend at
Bogle,
helping.
John Bogle.
Boom, there you go, yeah.
Rest in peace, John Bogle. Yeah.
Yes, rest in peace, and, like, what a great person who, low fees, innovative,
Yeah.
not greedy, letting the people compound, like, that innovation. So, it's interesting. There's a patch in Pennsylvania with a lot of,
It's in the water over here.
something in the water.
And the interesting thing is when I did the alts, I knew I'd never be bigger or small. I mean, cheaper or bigger. So I just went where they aren't. So, they inspired me. And I tell everyone blessed, lucky, and smart in that order. I just want to look different. And it's very difficult in Chester County when everyone's at Vanguard and there's no fees and they don't have to pay an advisor. If I was a regular advisor, it'd be very hard to say, well, we're going to get in the same thing, but I'm just going to charge you. And so the interesting thing with the alternative investments, again, if they qualify, if it's the right investment,
Mhm.
we're compensated by the sponsor, not by the client. So the clients aren't even paying us. They put 1 million, 100,000, whatever the number is, their statement shows that number. We're paid by the big sponsors to be the intermediary because they definitely want the client's money, but they don't want the client, like they don't want to have the 800 number and thousands of clients directly. The partners we work with are brand names and they're FINRA and SEC regulated. They want us and my family office to be the gatekeeper. And we're responsible for whether or not it's fiduciarily correct for the client. And frankly, we're suable if we're wrong because the sponsor doesn't want to deal with that. They want to say, okay, if Fred thinks we should have the money, we'll run with the ball. Their job isn't to say, should they have the money? It's our job to decide who should have the money, which
Right.
I think is a good win-win. It gets a lot of checks and balances. And I don't work for anybody but our clients. So I don't care what I put in front. I mean, I don't care. Yeah, I'm not obligated to sell them. There's no creative capital fund. And there's probably every week, every month, we'll get a reach out saying, hey, we'll do Your flagship model, we can make a ticker and then you can sell it to the masses. I'm like, that defeats the purpose. I don't have a cookie cutter answer. We have a playbook and they're vetted, but we adjust the playbook to the client. Because other than that, it's, we're not trying to be cookie cutter, but we also want to have best of breed, which is what my MBA was based on, was a best of breed concept where whatever your business does, outsource everything else. So we're even outsourcing. We pick the stock pickers. We don't pick the stocks. The really well companies do that. Like Apple has four product groups. They used to have 14,000. You can get an Apple printer, you can have an Apple pen, all crazy stuff back in the 80s. And they weren't making any money in the 80s either. So, focus is what creates wealth as long as it's focused on the right thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great way to say that. Okay, so here's like a beginner question or somebody who doesn't know you, and I'll
Sure.
be that guy. Okay, so you're in Pennsylvania and you've established yourself. You've got at least three, like, you know, product market, yeah, divisions. So I'm sure you have referrals. If someone watches this and doesn't know you, so if someone is a viewer of this podcast or has this forwarded to them and they're not a referral from a current customer, right? The question is, how does that, like, how do you, even if you're not looking per se, but like, how do new customers find you? And then what's the process for
Sure.
vetting if they're a good fit? Yeah.
So we want to value add even if they don't become a client. Like we never say no. Some people don't need us. Some people, we can just give them advice. And so no matter which thing they think they need, all of the introductory calls with us, and we do this all the time, is a values based conversation. It's not about which category, it's who are you and what's your money story. So we ask what's important about money, what are your goals? And that creates a roadmap that we give the person, they're not a client yet in this example, like it's in the very beginning, we'll give them a road even if we're not a fit for them or they don't need us yet. And so that roadmap, something they can, it's a PDF that we'll give them and it'll just map out. And usually it's husband and wife, what their values are, which are very important. So if one of your values is security, I'm not going to start with the most aggressive, growth investment under the sun, because to you and to me, we both know that that would probably violate your security important to think how important security is. So to get in touch with us, cwmg.com is fine. I think when I say alternative investments, it's kind of like the color blue. If I ask you to think of the color blue, I have no idea what color. Now, if you ask me, it's going to be this teal behind me because that's the only color blue I like.
Yeah.
And it's not even blue, it's teal, but that's my color blue. I think the word alternative is very similar. You have no idea what I mean by that. And I have no idea what you mean if you say it. So educating people on alternatives is exactly what the Forbes contribution and me being a contributor. So put my last name on Forbes.com. You'll see my page. Articles are free. I think you get 5 a week or 5 a month. I get paid by Forbes to write them, but you don't have to pay to read them. And the interesting thing is my daughter used to have a YouTube channel where she played with slime and she had a lot more subscribers than my Forbes channel. Now, in her case, it was just people liking it. It wasn't like, wasn't
Wait,
the same.
like Nickelodeon slime?
Yeah, just a slime, and I'm like, "Can I see this channel?" Like, there's some weirdos out there. It's just she didn't say anything. Like, it was a legitimate like 8, 9 year old girl doing slime, and slime's a big deal. I didn't know that, but what I did is I wrote an article comparing Taylor Swift to an alternative investment. My daughter said, "Can I read this article?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Do I have to subscribe?" I'm like, "Why would you not want to subscribe?" She goes, "Well, I don't want your subscriber number to be higher than mine." I'm like, that's my girl. All right. Yes, you can read the article. So your listeners do not have to subscribe to me, but if they do, they will read about what these alternatives are. And I'm not soliciting the product. I'm talking about the landscape. I explain private equity by using Richard Gere and Pretty Woman. Like I used to be for 10 years in the NFL Players Association. And I never paid for it, but organically, and it doesn't work anymore because I've been retired since 2018 from the NFL Player Association. But if you Google back in the day, best NFL financial advisor, I showed up. And so if I can explain to players who are in the equivalent of a car accident every weekend, these kind of, alternative investments, we can explain it to anybody because, you got to dumb it down so you have a level set of what you can understand. And as much as I have an MBA and understand the mechanics and the complexities of it, you can get the kernels out of it and explain it in a way that anyone can understand it. And so private equity is Richard Gere and Pretty Woman. That's pretty much they either buy companies and break them apart or they take companies and turn them around. And that's what he did. That's what he did in the show. Unfortunately, you and I are moving on in years. The younger group, some of them don't even know that. Our retainer-based planning has it basically looks like a circle with the wedges, and
Sure.
each wedge is a different element of the planning, cash flow, risk mitigation, estate planning, taxes, the whole 9 yards. And I was explaining it to a new employee and I explained them the whole MCP. And I said, it's like a trivial pursuit. You know, you have different wedges and you're trying to win the game of life, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, I said, do you have any questions? He's like, yeah, what's Trivial Pursuit? I'm like, oh my God, am I that old that now Trivial Pursuit? And, kid was in his third, maybe 28. How do you not know? I mean, to me, it's still out there. You can still buy Trivial Pursuit. So I've realized as I
Well,
get
is it
older,
on the iPad? Did it make it really digital?
yeah, I do. I now I'm updating my references because we had a staff meeting and I basically said, hey, we're not trying to jump the shark here. And I could tell by people's look, they had no idea what I'm like, let me stop here. Do you guys know Happy Days? Like we think we do. I'm like, do you know Fonzie? Like maybe. I'm like, so you don't know Jump the Shark? She goes, we thought you were having a stroke. Like, what are you talking about jumping the shark? I'm like, all right, I got to update my stuff. So, that's the fun part of being around for as long as I've been doing it. I got to come up with better, more, I do know 6-7, but I'm not allowed to use that at home because my kids go nuts. And my wife's like, will you stop that, please?
The references, yes. Connecting the okay, so alternative investments. You mentioned $30 trillion asset class or
By
category.
2030.
Can I oh, by 2030. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's growing. And just simple, yeah, again, as
Yeah.
someone who's new to the space, or if you were to explain to a child, and I'll be the child, is alternative assets, is that commonly like a collector, cars and artwork? And is it basically it's not real estate, it's not stocks, it's not
No, no,
equity?
no. So it is that too, but
Mhm.
that's like on the list of like when you have so much money, you then can buy a Renoir. That's great, and I'm happy for you. But that's not what we do. We don't even we want the traditional alternatives, which are really anything not in the stock market.
Hmm.
And the real reason is, and if you look at Harvard and Yale's allocation, about 70 to 80% of their money isn't in the market. So if the smartest people in the world or smart people in the world can put their money anywhere and they're not going in the market, where are they going? Because the rest of us, the market's the only thing we can go to. Like that's the only thing on our menu for most people. And if over time with bankruptcies and mergers, there's not nearly as many stocks as there used to be. There's not nearly as many tickers. And most mutual funds are in the same stuff. So an interesting story, we had a client with 17 million in mutual funds. And frankly, mutual funds are meant for people that don't have a lot of wealth. If you have $1,000, buy a mutual fund because you can't get a good portfolio for $1,000. You can't get an efficient portfolio, and but this guy had 17 million in mutual funds, and our software can look and see what's under the hood. He had 4 different advisors, and I wasn't one of them, and he had $17 million in all these funds. But we looked at it; they were all overlapped. And when you homogenized them and put them all together, he matched identical to the S&P 500. So we're doing like we do the analysis, we're going to the report, and interestingly, it was the most unprofessional I've ever been in a professional way. So I basically told the guy, listen, you don't need any of your other advisors. And I knew he was thinking of you only need me, but I wasn't even saying that. I'm like, you don't need any advisors, you don't need me. You basically match the S&P 500. So just buy an S&P 500 index fund and you'll have $17 million in that one ticker and you'll be exactly what you have now. And then he said, well, isn't having everything in one ticker stupid? And this is the unprofessional part that I enjoy. And I still smile. I can't stop smiling. What I said was, yes, and you already did it. And then I just let the pregnant pause. And then I'm thinking to myself, and thank God it was Zoom. He couldn't deck me. So thank God it was Zoom.
Right.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to find out why does he deserve the 17 million? Because there's a lot of rich people out there that inherited it, were lucky, and
Mm.
now they think they're smart and they're really not, but no one's going to tell them because they're the king of the hill and they're the source of all the fun for their family. So then he said, well, what can I do about it? I'm like, so then we started talking about, well, we can diversify alternative investments. So to answer your question, typically private equity, real estate, it's things that are typically not necessarily liquid for a certain amount of time, but also have no exposure to the stock market. Market goes down, your account doesn't, and if you own a piece of let's say an Amazon distribution center is real estate investments that let you be a partial owner of that. Well, if Amazon stock goes down, it doesn't change the rent. And if you own the building, it doesn't change your income. So it kind of protects you from the market. And there's a good place for the market, and 50% of our money's still in the market. So I'm not anti-market. I'm just saying, if you start to have more money, you can start to go further in the menu and start ordering stuff off the back of the menu versus just the basic appetizer. You can start getting some really good things. And everything we show clients is old, meaning it's been around forever and it may be new for the client to ever hear about, but because they've never been this old and have that much money before. But if their dad was that old and had decent amount of money and worked with someone like us, they already would have had private equity, private credit, private debt, and matched a lot of what alternative investments are. They're just things that aren't usually in the market and don't go up and down as much as the market goes down. And they have their own risk. So again, it's not a perfect answer. The blending is what makes it a better portfolio for clients. It's down, our stuff isn't. When the market's up, we can take some money off and start to diversify elsewhere. And then you do it for growth, you do it for income, and you tailor it to the client.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we're recording this February 2026. That's our timestamp. We're at the back half of the decade, right? And so I don't want to fixate on the pandemic, but you mentioned having some downtime in 2020, and I understood what you were talking about there. If how did the pandemic impact your business, including did it force retirement or did people opt to retire quicker or like, and then now going forward into the next 5 years, and how do we get clients comfortably to the year 2030 with AI disruption? I'll throw out buzzwords, Bitcoin and crypto, things like that. The question is like, do you see, yeah, what strategies are you seeing to help people get to 2030 as well as retire
Right.
by 2030? Because we're in the middle of a very interesting decade, and I like to say that, we're in the first few months of 2026, which is to say, if I were to build you a 5-year plan, cleanly ends in 2030. So basically, you're like, this is the second half of the 5 years to the decade. It's kind of cool, right? So my question is, what did you learn from the first 5 years of this decade that inform your vantage point to the next?
Yeah. So I grew up in the 80s, X-Files, Trust No One, and Ronald Reagan, Trust But Verify. So from a 2020 standpoint, from our business, it was really good because people said, hey, I own these little real estate and I have like 4 or 5 rentals. I'm scared of the, whether or not my income's going to be because I might lose my tenant or the tenant might not be required to pay. Because people forget how much in some locations, you're out of New York, there was times where you don't have to pay your rent. Well, that was on the renter side, but the landlord still had rent. And a lot of times these landlords were like self-made people and it hurt a lot of people. So for us, 2020 reminded us that not everything goes up all the time. And we already knew that. I am very market risk averse. I think the market's overdue for a correction, but I've been saying that for a while. Like it's in 18, 19 years. And the thing that's kind of weird is it's called a recency bias. It's a psychology. Every time there was a stimulus in the market where it went down, so whether it's 2008 or COVID, eventually it comes back up in a relatively short amount of time. Like 2008 was most recent, a horrible time. Within a year and a half, you started things going back, and within 2 years, we're back where we were. COVID, in 6 months, we were exactly back where we were. Well, that drop and then spring back up, that's an anomaly. But that's all that's all we know. And that's all our frame of reference is. More likely, the next downtime will take much longer to come back up. Now, only thing I can compare it to, and I'm not saying it's coming, but the Great Depression, just as an example, took 14 years to get back to where it was before it started. Now, I don't think that's going to be there, but the days of really bad news, everything's horrible, the world's going down, 6 months later, we're back. That part, AI is not going anywhere, and no one, including AI, can tell you what it's going to do if you ask AI what the future is, even it, like, so, well, possibly this, possibly that. I did, and this is something that I've told everybody, and they laughed. If you want to, and this is a free gift to if they're morbid like I am, ask AI based on what you know about me, write my obituary and include the most likely way I'm going to die. You got to be in the right mindset to do that, and it'll answer it. And by the way, it's heart disease for me. It doesn't tell me when. Like I'm saying, pretend like I died today.
Question.
Yeah.
Is this like a new account with ChatGPT, or do you actually have to like,
You just ask it. You just it's a prompt. I'm just saying, like people use. I'm
does
like,
it already
hey,
have to know you?
don't even, and a lot of times it does. I mean, for me, I'm out there. So there's a lot of articles and I'm in a lot of podcasts. So maybe it just worked for me better. It did have my mom as Brenda and my mom's name was Susan. So again, it's not going to be accurate. I hope my wife doesn't use that as my obituary if I die before her. But it was just an interesting way. So what I'm getting at is the headwinds are the stock market's overvalued. We all know it, but most of us, that's the only place we can put our money. And that's the sad part. The richer my clients are, the less they have exposed to the market because basically that's a buy, hold, and hope. If you buy any stock today, you're just hoping someone's going to pay you more for it later. That's not a strategy. But if you buy private equity, just as an example, not soliciting private equity, any kind of private equity won't buy the company unless they know what they're going to do to turn it around. So they're not, it's kind of like real estate, but it's businesses. You buy the house that had the cat lady in it for 17 years, not the nicest house, because you can improve the cat lady house and then sell it at market value and make a ton of money. So because of that as our headset, we always stress what's the worst thing that can happen. That's where we begin. And then what's the connection? What's the value add economic generator that has nothing to do with the stock market being higher than what we bought it? So a lot of that has to do, what's the story behind it? Is it real estate? Well, who's the tenant? And that's fun because once you understand the story, you see how wealth works. Wealth is typically generated by adding value, not just by holding onto a stock over. And behind the scenes, if you hold a stock over a long period of time at the company level of the stock you bought, they're adding value if the price is worth more in the future. They're doing something, they're rolling out, let's say it's Tesla and they have self-driving cars, or it's a different company that has a viral product. That is an added value, but you don't want to bet on that. So we're very conservative, even though we're alternatives. There's very safe alternatives. Alternatives don't necessarily mean risky. They
Mhm.
just mean not exposed to the market. And in most alternatives, the risk is a lack of liquidity for a certain period of time because they need your money to go do the thing that you hired them to do, and they don't want you pulling the money out from underneath them because they haven't done it yet. So a
Right.
lot of investments get in your 2030. A lot of investments have 3 and 5 year holds in which you get a statement every quarter, like it's not hidden from you, but they're not giving you back your capital until their job's done. And you know ahead of time, what's that going to take? Is it a 3 year? Is it a 5 year? And then now that more and more people are going in, companies are offering alternatives. A lot of them are using an interval fund, which just gives us liquidity.
Hmm.
So it looks like a ticker, but it's a ticker of infrastructure. Or it's a ticker of private real estate, but it's at a portfolio level. So if you want to know what's in our playbook, I would say look at Harvard and Yale. It's going to be very. I mean, it's different, but it's similar to that. And we have a model portfolio in house that we will match what clients are in compared to our model portfolio and show the gaps. And that's part of the analysis. So those people typically don't have a lot of it's in our playbook because they don't have access to someone like me. If I was still at my old brokerage firm, which is probably one that is on everyone's corner, they don't do alts. I wouldn't be able to do what I do, there. So I created my own company to do it my way, and I'm my own client. And we joked before the YouTube started, I don't have to work, but I want to work because if I don't, I'll show my wife how to load the dishwasher, and you won't find my body. So I'm just here. I'm happy. My kids work here every now and then. My wife here works here every now and then, and I love the camaraderie of helping clients and having a team of people. That to me is fun.
That's awesome. Okay, last question.
Sure.
Who is your favorite customer, client? Like, what's your favorite because you've touched on so many solutions and
Yeah.
so many offerings. So when for those who enjoyed, solving puzzles and helping people, right? So then the question is, and you mentioned the gentleman who was matching the S&P 500 without knowing it, and like that's like one of these like, and that's a challenging conversation. But
Right.
that was the hurdle rate. You were kind of doing it. But my guess, last question is like, yeah, like what is your favorite customer like situation that like if you could ask for a new customer that like had a situation or to call you because of this, that you're like, this is my favorite, most rewarding, maybe not even that challenging of a conversation. It's actually
Right.
like more comfortable for both parties, but like still a good outcome. Yeah, just curious if you could touch on that real
Great
quick.
question. I think anyone who's self-made, you can be in a W-2 and be the CEO or a director, but you came from, you came from a horrible background. I love people self-made because they took a chance. The book's coming out. It's not out yet. I don't have a title yet, but I can give the gist of it. It's about being a contrarian and then timing it so that you're right. Because there are a lot of people that are contrarians that are wrong. And history is filled with people that were contrarians and were right and they never did anything. So it's a and the book's going to be talking about this. Be a contrarian, be right, and take massive action. And that's kind of what I did. And I was having a cigar. My only vice is a cigar. And I think to myself, how did I get, there's 400,000 people call themselves a financial advisor, but I'm the one writing for Forbes. I'm the one in 34 states. So I'm like, how did I do this? Like, I didn't get it from my dad. I started this from scratch. And I realized Ed did those three things by accident. I was a contrarian. I happened to be right. So if I was doing alts 10 years from now, it would have been too late. 10 years sooner than I started in 2003, there wouldn't have been any alts to like, no one would have had, there was no market, there's nothing. And like I said, in 2030, it's going to be $30 trillion. I just want a trillion of that, Jeff. I'm not a greedy person. I just want a trillion of it. And hopefully if I say it, it'll happen because I know people need options and I know we provide options. To answer your question, self-made that has a tax issue, we can do things that might make them cry because they've realized how much they've either would have paid or did pay, and we can claw some of that back. Our best referral sources are CPAs because CPAs can only tell you max out your 401k. That's pretty much their game plan or your SEP or your retirement account, where we can say, okay, after you do that, We can do an oil and gas income offset. We can do, an accelerated depreciation fund. Like there's a bunch of stuff out there, and Google it. Like the best part of this is if anyone's watching or listening to my, or not listening, but reading my Forbes article, they can do their own research because I'm putting the information out there. And that's the hardest thing of my job. Almost everyone's like, wait, I've never heard about this before. It must be Bernie Madoff. And the answer is it isn't. You just never been this rich before. You've never been exposed to the information. Some of the stuff that I'm doing today is 30 years old. It's been around, and some, 80 years old. Like private equity's always been around. It's just never got any news, and now it's starting to. So I'm using the Forbes.com articles to expose people to educate themselves on something other than stocks and bonds.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, but at some point you need more than that, and you need to know where to go. So any self-made person with a tax problem, they're fun. I can probably eyeball that in the first meeting, save them a ton of money in most cases. And if I can't, we've refunded the engagement anyway, so we've never had to refund it,
Yeah.
because there's always something we can do. The hard part is explaining something to them they've never seen before, so we make sure they get educated, because if
Mhm.
you understand it and you're in it, that's great. If you don't understand it, don't get in it. And so we take education very seriously, because you really need to understand it, because they won't have a Morningstar report, a 5-star Morningstar report about the investments I do, because they're not allowed to report their stuff to like Morningstar and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Yeah, it does. Yes,
Okay.
beautiful. Thank you. And this has been this fantastic conversation. I think we're going to call it here. So, where's the best place for people to find you? We'll put the links and the contact up in the show notes. But if you wanted to say it now for the viewers,
Yep. So
what's the best way to reach out?
Forbes.com, put my last name, Hubler. You'll see my contributor page. It's all about alternative investments. So if you want to read about what we're doing or what's out there, some of my articles aren't even things we're doing. They're just things I did some research on, and they're alternative investments. Our website is ccwmg.com, and that's more just my company. There's probably not a lot of information. I mean, I haven't been there in a while, so maybe it's a lot. So I'll have to look at that. But they're the two places, and either place I think is a resource for them to learn about it and then do some research. And if they want to talk to one of my team, you can do that from ccwmg.com. But I was here to serve you, not to bring clients or get clients. Answer some questions and have a great time with you, which we did.
We
Time
did.
flew by, wasn't it?
Much. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.